The human race trembled in awe as the Una's survey team stumbled upon the ruined husk of humanity's most advanced warship. A 10-mile-long black blade of aggression and cunning that dwarfed any interstellar vessel the galaxy had witnessed. Louis Russell winced as his salvage ship's comms panel lit up with an incoming message. The grizzled explorer recognized the sender immediately, an old alien acquaintance named Umbra. The cryptic transmission contained coordinates to an uncharted star system at the galaxy's fringe. Along with a single line, "Found something that'll change everything. Get here first, and it's yours." Always eager for a challenge, Louis punched the coordinates into the Valiant's nav computer. His gut told him that whatever awaited him would either make his career or end his life. As the salvage ship dropped out of warp, Louis's jaw dropped. Orbiting a massive gas giant was the shattered remnant of the largest spacecraft he'd ever seen. Sensors estimated the length at over 10 miles. The hull was forged from an unidentifiable alloy that defied scans. Louis guided the Valiant to the derelict's hangar bay, barely big enough to fit his ship. He armed himself and stepped aboard the silent Titan, ready to uncover its secrets. But a second message from Umbra cut through the quiet. A Unas faction, notorious for their ruthless expansion, was inbound. Louis gritted his teeth. The Unas would butcher him without hesitation to claim this prize. He needed to work fast, prying open the ship's secrets before the Unas arrived. If the advanced weapons he theorized were within fell into their cruel hands, humanity's shaky foothold on the galactic stage would crumble to dust. Mankind's survival depended on Louis unlocking this ancient behemoth's genius. Louis entered the derelict vessel, clad in his spacesuit. The lights from his suit illuminated the alien corridors with an eerie glow. As he ventured deeper into the ship, he saw that its interior was in good condition, despite how old it looked on the outside. He found a massive hangar bay, filled with small spacecraft that looked like fighters and bombers. It dawned on him that this was a supercarrier capable of combat in space and atmosphere. The technology was human, but light years beyond anything he had seen. How did a ship like this end up way out here so far from Earth? Louis kept exploring until he reached the carrier's bridge. It was intact and powered by some unknown energy source. He accessed the ship's logs and couldn't believe what he read. The carrier was called the USS Titan, part of a secret human military project centuries ago. The Titan had been sent to establish a hidden human outpost in a faraway part of the galaxy, but it never came back. Louis had so many questions and few answers, but he knew finding the Titan could seriously change the balance of power in the galaxy. He started to download more data from the ship's computers when an alarm blared through the carrier. The Unas had arrived and were sending boarding parties to take the ship. Louis had to hurry and get the Titan's secrets and escape before the Unas captured him and the ship. Louis slammed his fist on the console, fingers flying across the keyboard, as he downloaded the data on the Titan's mission onto a portable drive. The ship's klaxons blared in his ears, warning of the incoming Unas soldiers. He yanked the drive out and sprinted through the corridors, boots clanging on the metal deck. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Unas troopers. They opened fire immediately, plasma bolts scorching the walls. Louis dove behind a bulkhead, grabbing his sidearm and returning fire. The Unas advanced, trying to pin him down. But Louis knew the Titan's layout better than them. He ducked into a maintenance tunnel, crawling through the tight space as the Unas shot at him from behind. He emerged near the hangar bay and ran for the Valiant. Plasma sizzled past his head as he leaped into his ship and slammed the airlock shut. Louis's hands shook as he fired up the engines. The Valiant lifted off, narrowly dodging the Unas fire. He punched the throttle and rocketed out of the Titan's hangar. Through the view screen, he watched a swarm of Unas ships descend upon the supercarrier like locust. The Titan's defenses flickered on, but were no match for the Unas's superior tech. They latched onto the larger ship, slicing into its hull to board it. "Shit," Louis muttered. The Unas would tear the Titan apart to steal its secrets. He had to find out what the ship had been doing out here, and fast. Lives depended on it, maybe even the fate of the galaxy. He plugged in the coordinates for Waypoint Station. a seedy but neutral port free from the Una's influence. As the ship went to FTL, Louis tapped on his comms, hailing Umbra's secure channel. "Umbra, you there? I found the ship, but the Unas have it now." "Have you got out alive?" The alien's voice crackled with static. "With the data?" "Yeah, I did. Hoping you could shed some light on what the hell is going on." Umbra hesitated before responding. "Louis, this is bigger than you realize. That ship is just the start. I'm part of a group, the Watchers, that's been tracking strange human activity and relics across the galaxy, things your government wants to keep buried. If you want the truth, meet me at Waypoint alone." Louis leaned back in his chair, mind reeling. What had he stumbled into? Some kind of conspiracy with the Titan at its heart. He had to uncover what was really happening. The question was whether he could trust Umbra, or if he had to strike out on his own. But if he played this wrong, the Unas would gain an unbeatable advantage. The balance of power across the stars would shift in their favor. He couldn't let that happen. Louis strode through the airlock of the secret base, Umbra at his side. The station was a marvel of engineering, hidden deep within a lifeless moon. As they entered the central hub, Louis marveled at the diversity of the beings gathered there. Reptilian Krovacs huddled with insectoid Zix, while a pair of towering behemoths conversed with a lithe blue-skinned Aurorian, and in the center of it all, a human woman with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes. "Louis, meet Dr. Ilara Voss," Umbra said, gesturing to the woman. "She's our resident expert on the Titan." Dr. Voss extended a hand, her grip firm. "A pleasure, Louis. I've been analyzing the Titan's tech for months, but your data, it's the key we've been missing." Louis nodded, handing her the drive. "Let's get to work then. The Unas have the Titan, and who knows what they'll do with it." The trio gathered around a holographic display, Dr. Voss pulling up the data. Streams of code flowed past, interspersed with schematics and star charts. "The Titan wasn't just a warship," Dr. Voss said, eyes widening. "It was a research vessel. Look at these labs, the databases. This was a repository of human knowledge hidden away out here." "But why?" Louis asked. "What were they trying to protect?" Umbra leaned in, tracing a finger over a star map. "The outpost. It wasn't just a military base, it was a sanctuary. For human culture, technology, a backup in case the worst happened." Dr. Voss nodded. "And now the Unas have the key to finding it." A chill ran down Louis's spine. The Unas weren't the only ones searching for this place. He'd heard whispers of other factions, ones with less savory intentions than mere conquest. Zealots, warlords, beings who would use the outpost's secrets to burn the galaxy. "We have to find it first," Louis said, "before the Unas or anyone else does." Dr. Voss typed furiously, brow furrowed. "There's something here, encrypted coordinates hidden in the data. If we can crack the code, then we'll have a shot at reaching the outpost before our enemies," Umbra finished. Louis looked at Dr. Voss, feeling a sudden kinship. They were both explorers at heart, driven by the need to uncover the truth, to protect the legacy of their species. "Let's get to it then," Louis said. "We've got a galaxy to save." As the team dove into the data, racing against the clock, Louis felt a flicker of hope. The odds were stacked against them, but they had each other. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The base suddenly shuddered, alarms blaring. Louis and Dr. Voss looked up from the console, eyes wide. "Proximity alert!" Umbra shouted over the klaxons. "We've got incoming." On the viewscreen, a fleet of ships dropped out of warp. Una's cruisers, their hulls bristling with weapons, and at the center a sight that turned Louis's blood to ice. The Titan in all its dark glory, surrounded by the Una's fleet like an ancient god of war. "They tracked us," Dr. Voss whispered. "But how?" Louis's mind raced. Had there been a hidden transmitter in the data, a tracking device planted on the Valiant? It didn't matter now. All that mattered was survival. Umbra's voice crackled over the comms. "All personnel to battle stations. Prepare to repel boarders." Louis and Dr. Voss shared a look, the unspoken question hanging between them. Could they hope to stand against the might of the Unas, bolstered by the Titan's power? "The coordinates," Dr. Voss said urgently. "We have to get them to the Valiant, escape before—" The base shook again, sparks flying from overloaded consoles. On the view screen, dropships poured from the Unas cruisers, hurtling toward the station. Louis grabbed Dr. Voss's hand, pulling her toward the hangar. "We have to go, now." They sprinted through the chaos, dodging debris and panicked crew members. Behind them, the sound of tearing metal and plasma fire signaled the Unas' arrival. They were out of time. In the hangar, Louis punched the code to open the Valiant's airlock. Dr. Voss hesitated, looking back at the base, at the beings still fighting and dying to buy them a chance. "We can't just leave them," she said, voice thick with emotion. Louis's heart ached, but he knew they had no choice. "We have to. The coordinates, the outpost, and it's the only way to save them. To save everyone." Dr. Voss closed her eyes, then nodded. They leaped into the Valiant, sealing the airlock behind them. As Louis fired up the engines, he saw Umbra on the view screen, locked in combat with a hulking Unas warrior. The alien's eyes met Louis's through the screen, a fierce light burning within. "Go," Umbra roared. "Find the outpost. Protect our future." Louis swallowed hard, then punched the thrusters. The Valiant shot out of the hangar, engines screaming as it clawed for open space. But the Unas were waiting. The Titan loomed before them, its weapons glowing with deadly light. Louis wrenched the controls, sending the Valiant into a desperate corkscrew. "Coordinates locked," Dr. Voss reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Preparing for warp." Louis gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of skill into keeping them alive for a few seconds more. Plasma bolts sizzled past the cockpit, close enough to rattle his bones. "Warp drive engaged," Dr. Voss called. "In 3, 2... The Valiant shuddered as a bolt clipped its shields. Warning alarms shrieked, red lights flashing. Louis's heart pounded, certain that the next shot would tear them apart. But then the stars blurred, stretching into infinite lines as the Valiant leaped into warp. The Titan and the Unas fleet vanished, replaced by the swirling maelstrom of faster-than-light travel. Louis sagged back in his chair, adrenaline still surging through his veins. They'd made it. Barely. Dr. Voss laid a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and steady. "We'll find it," she said softly. "The outpost. We'll keep fighting." Louis nodded, covering her hand with his own. They had the coordinates, they had each other. And somewhere out there, a hidden sanctuary awaited, a beacon of hope in a galaxy consumed by darkness. All they had to do was reach it. The Valiant hurtled through the swirling vortex of warp space, its hull vibrating with the strain of the journey. In the ship's cramped confines, Louis and his team hunched over consoles, eyes locked on sensor readouts and star charts. Dr. Voss worked alongside Louis, her brow furrowed as she deciphered the Titan's encrypted data. "I've got something," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "The Titan's propulsion system, and it's like nothing I've ever seen. Some kind of quantum field manipulation that allows for near-instantaneous jumps across vast distances." Louis leaned in, studying the schematics. "If we could get our hands on that tech—" "It would change everything," Umbra finished, his alien eyes gleaming. The ship jolted suddenly, alarms blaring. Louis grabbed the controls, fighting to keep the Valiant steady as they dropped out of warp. The view screen filled with a chaotic field of tumbling asteroids, their jagged surfaces glinting in the starlight. "Shit," Louis hissed, hands flying over the console. "Looks like we're not the only ones interested in this outpost." Dr. Voss pointed to a flicker of movement amidst the rocks. "Unas patrol ships closing fast." Louis gritted his teeth, adrenaline surging. He'd outflown Unas before, but never in a field this dense. The Valiant darted and weaved, its shields flaring as the smaller ships opened fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past the cockpit, the heat of their passage searing Louis's skin. He jinked hard to port, threading the needle between two massive asteroids. The Unas ship split formation, trying to box him in. Divert all power to engines, Louis barked, his eyes locked on the twisting path ahead. We're punching through. Dr. Voss worked frantically, her fingers a blur on the controls. The Valiant surged forward, its frame groaning under the strain. Louis pushed the thrusters to their limit, the force slamming him back into his seat. The Unas closed in, their weapons hammering at the Valiant's shields. Warning lights flashed red across the console, systems failing one by one. Louis knew they couldn't take much more of this. Suddenly, a massive shape loomed out of the asteroid field, dwarfing the Unas ships. A Unas warship, its hull bristling with gun batteries. Louis's blood ran cold. They were outclassed and outgunned. The warship opened fire, a storm of plasma bolts ripping through space. The Valiant shuddered under the onslaught, its shields collapsing. Louis wrenched the controls, desperately trying to evade. But it was too late. A bolt slammed into the Valiant's flank, tearing through hull plating like paper. The ship spun, alarms shrieking as the cabin filled with acrid smoke. Louis hauled the ship into a desperate corkscrew, fighting to bring the nose around. He had one chance, one last desperate gambit. He locked onto the warship's weapons array, the targeting reticle flashing red. With a wordless yell, he diverted all remaining power to the forward cannons and fired. The Valiant's guns roared, a lance of searing light spearing through the void. It struck the warship's weapons dead center, the array erupting in a blinding flash. The warship reeled, its guns falling silent. Louis didn't hesitate. He punched the thrusters, rocketing past the stricken behemoth and into clear space. But the Valiant was badly damaged, its systems failing. They needed repairs and fast. "There's a station nearby," Umbra said, his voice strained. "We can make it, barely." Louis nodded, his hands shaking on the controls. They'd escaped the Unas, but at a cost. He just hoped the knowledge locked in the Titan's data was worth it. As the Valiant limped into the station's docking bay, Louis helped Dr. Voss to her feet. She clung to him for a moment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, straightening. "I will be. Let's just hope this station has the parts we need." They disembarked, stepping into the bustling chaos of the station's market district. Merchants hawked their wares from ramshackle stalls, the air thick with the scent of exotic spices and machine oil. As they navigated the crowds, a hooded figure stepped into their path. Umbra tensed, his hand dropping to his weapon. "Umbra," the figure rasped. "It's been a long time." The figure lowered his hood, revealing a face lined with age and hardship. Umbra's eyes widened in recognition. "Zaxxon, but you were exiled. How—" The old alien held up a gnarled hand. "There's no time. I know why you're here, the outpost, the Titan's mission. It's not what you think." Louis stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Zaxxon's eyes met his, ancient and haunted. The outpost wasn't just a sanctuary, it was a vault, a prison for something terrible. Dr. Voss inhaled sharply. "The artifact, the one the data mentioned." Zaxxon nodded. "A relic of immense power, locked away to keep it from falling into the wrong hands, but now—" Louis's mind raced. An artifact that could change the course of the galaxy, hidden away by his ancestors. And now, with the Unas and other factions closing in, he turned to his team, jaw set. They had a choice to make. Trust this stranger and his dire warnings, or forge ahead alone into an uncertain future. The weight of the galaxy's fate settled on Louis's shoulders. He took a deep breath, meeting Dr. Voss's eyes. In their depths, he saw the same determination that burned in his own heart. No turning back now. For better or worse, they'd see this through to the end. Together. Louis regarded Zephyr with a mix of suspicion and hope. The old alien's scarred face told a story of hardship and loss, but his eyes held a fierce determination. After a long moment, Louis nodded. "We're in this together now. Tell us what you know." Zephyr settled into a chair, his joints creaking. "I was part of the team that first discovered the artifact. We were young and foolish, drunk on the power it promised. But some of us saw the danger, the destruction it could unleash. We fought to keep it hidden, to protect the galaxy from itself. As the Valiant hurtled through the void, Zephyr spun a tale of betrayal and sacrifice, of a desperate mission to spirit the artifact away to the farthest reaches of space. Louis and Dr. Voss listened intently, piecing together the clues that had led them to this moment. Days turned into weeks as they navigated the treacherous route to the outpost. Louis spent long hours in the cockpit, his eyes fixed on the star charts and sensor readouts. Dr. Voss worked tirelessly to decipher the Titan's encrypted data, searching for any scrap of information that could give them an edge. And then finally they arrived. The outpost loomed before them, a sprawling complex carved into the heart of an asteroid. Louis guided the Valiant into a hidden docking bay, his heart pounding with anticipation. As they stepped out onto the asteroid's surface, Louis felt a sense of awe wash over him. The outpost was a marvel of engineering, a testament to the ingenuity and determination of its long-dead creators. But there was no time to admire the view. They had work to do. They split into teams, each with a specific mission. Louis and Dr. Voss delved into the heart of the outpost, following the twisting corridors and abandoned labs. Umbra and Zephyr took up defensive positions, their weapons at the ready. As they pushed deeper into the facility, Louis and Dr. Voss encountered a series of traps and defenses, each more deadly than the last. Laser grids seared the air, while hidden turrets spat streams of plasma. They ducked and weaved, relying on their wits and reflexes to stay one step ahead of the outpost's automated guardians. In one chamber they discovered a prototype of the Titan's quantum drive, its sleek lines and glowing core, a promise of untold power. In another, they found banks of computers, their screens dark and lifeless. Dr. Voss set to work, her fingers flying over the ancient keyboards as she coaxed the systems back to life. Outside, the sounds of battle echoed through the asteroid's halls. Umbra and Zephyr fought with grim determination, holding off wave after wave of Una's warriors. Louis gritted his teeth, knowing that every second counted. And then they were through, standing before a massive blast door that sealed the artifact chamber. Dr. Voss's hands shook as she entered the final codes, the door sliding open with a hiss of hydraulics. They stepped inside, their hearts racing, and there it was, the artifact, suspended in a beam of shimmering energy. Louis reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the ancient metal. But before he could grasp it, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and implacable. "Intruders detected. State your identity and purpose." Louis spun, his eyes widening as a holographic figure materialized before them. It was an AI, its features shifting and morphing as it studied them with clinical detachment. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're here to protect the artifact, to keep it safe from those who would abuse its power." The AI tilted its head, its eyes narrowing. "And why should I trust you? Why should I believe that you are any different from the others who have come before?" Louis swallowed hard, his mind racing. They had come so far, risked so much. He couldn't let it end like this, not when they were so close. He met the AI's gaze, his voice ringing with conviction. "Because we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy, for the right of every species to live free from fear and oppression. And that starts here, with this artifact, with the choice we make today." The AI regarded him for a long moment, its expression unreadable, and then finally it nodded. "Very well, you may proceed, but know this. The artifact's power is not to be trifled with. Use it wisely, or not at all." Louis let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He turned to Dr. Voss, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Let's do this." Louis stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the AI. "Prometheus, I understand your hesitation, but believe me when I say that we are here to protect the artifact, not to use it for our own gain." Dr. Voss nodded, her eyes locked on the shimmering hologram. "We've risked everything to find this place, to keep the artifact out of the wrong hands. Please, let us prove our intentions to you." Prometheus regarded them silently, its form shifting and morphing as it processed their words. Lewis felt a sudden pressure in his mind, a probing sensation that sent shivers down his spine. He realized that the AI was delving into their thoughts, their memories, searching for any hint of deception. He let his mental barriers fall away, allowing Prometheus to see the truth of his mission, the sacrifices he had made, the friends he had lost, the unrelenting drive to protect humanity's legacy. Beside him, Dr. Voss did the same, her own memories of hardship and determination flowing into the AI's consciousness. For a long moment the chamber was silent, the only sound the distant echo of battle beyond the walls. Then, slowly, Prometheus began to change. Its form solidified, taking on a more human appearance, its eyes softening with understanding. "I see now the depth of your conviction," the AI said, its voice resonating with newfound warmth. "You truly are the guardians this artifact needs." Louis let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thank you, Prometheus. We won't let you down." The AI nodded, then turned its attention to the chamber's walls. "Your friends are in trouble. The Unas have breached the outer defenses and are closing in." Dr. Voss's eyes widened. "We have to help them." Prometheus waved a hand, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a cache of weapons and technology beyond anything Louis had ever seen. "Take these," the AI said. "They were developed by the outpost's original inhabitants, designed to protect against any threat." Louis and Dr. Voss armed themselves quickly, marveling at the sleek, powerful devices. Then, following Prometheus's guidance, they raced out of the chamber and into the heart of the battle. The scene that greeted them was one of chaos and destruction. Umbra, Zephyr, and the others fought with desperate ferocity, using every weapon and tactic at their disposal to hold back the Una's onslaught. But they were badly outnumbered, and Louis could see the exhaustion and desperation in their eyes. He raised his weapon, a sleek rifle that hummed with barely contained power, and fired. A bolt of searing energy lanced out, cutting through the Una's ranks like a scythe. Dr. Voss joined him, her own weapon spitting streams of plasma that melted through armor and flesh alike. The team rallied around them, their spirits lifted by the sudden influx of firepower. Together they pushed back against the Unas, forcing them to retreat deeper into the outpost's winding corridors. But even with their newfound weapons, Louis knew they couldn't hold out forever. The Unas were too many and their own numbers too few. They needed something more, something to turn the tide of battle once and for all. As if in answer to his thoughts, Prometheus's voice echoed through their comms. "I have activated the outpost's energy shield. It will protect you from any further attacks, but you must retreat to the central chamber to be within its radius." Louis nodded, relaying the message to the others. They fell back, fighting every step of the way, until at last they reached the heart of the outpost. The energy shield shimmered into existence around them, an impenetrable barrier of shimmering light. Beyond it, the Unas forces swarmed and raged, their weapons fire dissipating harmlessly against the shield's surface. Louis watched them with a grim satisfaction, knowing that they were safe, at least for now. But as he turned to survey his team, he realized the true cost of their victory. They were battered and bloody, their faces etched with the strain of battle, and in their eyes he saw the same question that haunted his own thoughts. What now? They had the artifact and the means to protect it, but the galaxy beyond the outpost's walls was still a dangerous and uncertain place, filled with enemies who would stop at nothing to claim the relic's power for themselves. Louis knew that their mission was far from over. They had won the battle, but the war for the artifact and for the fate of the galaxy itself had only just begun. In the heart of the hidden outpost, Louis, Dr. Voss, and the rest of the team gathered around Prometheus, their faces etched with a mix of exhaustion and determination. The AI's holographic form flickered as it relayed its startling discovery. "The Convergence," Prometheus said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "A secretive organization that has been manipulating the galactic stage for decades. They have infiltrated the UNAs, the Galactic Council, and countless other factions, all in pursuit of the artifact. Louis leaned forward, his brow furrowed. But why? What do they want with it? Power, Dr. Voss said softly. The kind of power that could reshape the galaxy. Prometheus nodded. Precisely. The Convergence seeks to use the artifact to control the very fabric of space and time. With it, they could dominate every civilization, every world. A heavy silence fell over the group. They had fought so hard, sacrificed so much to keep the artifact out of the wrong hands. But now it seemed, the threat was greater than they had ever imagined. We can't let that happen, Louis said, his voice hard with resolve. We have to stop them. But how? Umbra asked. We're just a handful of people up against a galaxy-spanning conspiracy. Prometheus held up a hand. There is a way. The artifact itself may hold the key to the Convergence's defeat. If we can unlock its full potential, we may be able to expose their machinations and neutralize their influence. Louis and Dr. Voss exchanged a glance. They both knew the risks, the dangers of tampering with such a powerful relic, but they also knew that they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. All right, Louis said. Let's do it. But we have to be careful. We can't let the artifact's power corrupt us like it has so many others. Dr. Voss nodded. Agreed, we'll need to study it, learn how to control it safely. Prometheus, will you help us? The AI inclined its head. Of course, I will guide you as best I can, but the path ahead will not be easy. The artifact's secrets are not easily unlocked. As Louis and Dr. Voss set to work, delving into the artifact's ancient mysteries, Umbra and Zephyr turned their attention outward. Using their contacts and resources, they began to map the Convergence's network, tracing the strands of the web that stretched across the stars. What they found was staggering in its complexity. The Convergence had agents in every major government, every major corporation. They had been pulling the strings of galactic events for centuries, manipulating wars, trade, and politics to their own ends. But as they dug deeper, Umbra and Zephyr began to face resistance. Convergence operatives, alerted to their efforts, began to hunt them across the stars. They were forced to stay constantly on the move, always one step ahead of their pursuers. Back at the outpost, Louis and Dr. Voss worked tirelessly, poring over the artifact's intricate designs and cryptic inscriptions. With Prometheus's guidance, they slowly began to unravel its secrets. And then, after weeks of study, they made a breakthrough. The artifact they discovered was not just a tool of great power, it was a repository of knowledge, a library of the wisdom of a long-forgotten civilization. More than that, it held the key to a technology beyond anything they had ever seen, the power to create stable wormholes, to connect distant points in space as easily as stepping through a doorway. Louis felt a thrill of excitement as he realized the implications. With this technology, they could change the face of the galaxy. They could bring species together, foster peace and understanding on a scale never before possible. But he also knew that in the wrong hands, it could be a tool of unimaginable destruction. The Convergence, if they ever gained control of the artifact, could use it to conquer and enslave, to crush any resistance to their rule. He looked at Dr. Voss, saw the same realization in her eyes. They had unlocked the artifact's greatest secret, but in doing so, they had also painted a target on their backs. The Convergence would stop at nothing to claim the prize they had sought for so long. The fight, Louis knew, was far from over. If anything, it had only just begun. But with the artifact's power at their fingertips and a team of brave souls at his side, he felt a flicker of hope amid the gathering darkness. They would face the Convergence. They would expose their lies and bring their schemes to light, and maybe, just maybe, they would change the galaxy for the better. Whatever the cost, whatever the sacrifice, they would see this through to the end. For the sake of all they held dear, they had to. The future of the galaxy, of every soul within it, depended on them. Louis and Dr. Voss worked tirelessly, poring over the artifact's intricate designs and hidden functions. With each passing hour, they grew more excited as they unlocked the secrets of the ancient device. "This is incredible," Dr. Voss said, her eyes wide with wonder. The sheer potential of this technology, it could change everything. Louis nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. If we can create a network of wormholes, linking the major civilizations of the galaxy, we could turn the tide against the convergence. Rapid response, coordinated efforts, they wouldn't stand a chance. But even as the plan took shape, they knew it would not be easy. Trust was a rare commodity in the galaxy, and the artifact's power would be viewed with suspicion and fear by many. "And we'll need allies," Louis said, his brow furrowed. "The support of the key players in the galactic stage. Without their backing, we're dead in the water." Dr. Voss met his gaze, determination etched in her features. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll show them the truth, the evidence we've gathered. We'll make them see that this is the only way." They gathered the team, Umbra, Zephyr, and a handful of trusted companions, and set out on a diplomatic mission unlike any the galaxy had seen. They traveled to the homeworlds of the great civilizations, from the towering spires of the Aurorans to the misty jungles of the Krovax. In each place, they met with leaders and diplomats presenting their case with a mix of hard evidence and impassioned pleas. They spoke of the convergence's insidious reach, the manipulation and deceit that threatened the very fabric of galactic society. Some were receptive, seeing the wisdom in the proposed alliance. Others were hesitant, fearful of the artifact's power and the potential for abuse. Louis and his team found themselves engaged in a delicate dance of negotiation and persuasion, navigating the complex web of galactic politics, with every ounce of skill and charisma they possessed. But even as they made progress, they uncovered deeper layers of the convergence's influence. On the Zix homeworld, they stumbled upon a plot to assassinate a prominent leader, one who had been an outspoken critic of the shadowy organization. In a heart-pounding race against time, Louis and Umbra managed to thwart the attempt, their quick thinking and combat prowess saving the day. The leader, a grizzled Zix warrior named Xarox, pledged his support to their cause, his gratitude and respect hard-won. Word of their actions spread like wildfire, and soon more and more civilizations flocked to their banner. What had begun as a handful of committed individuals had grown into a true alliance, a force for change and hope in a galaxy too long mired in darkness. With renewed purpose, Louis and Dr. Voss threw themselves into the creation of the wormhole network. Using the artifact's power and Prometheus's guidance, they worked day and night, forging the connections that would bind the galaxy together. The outpost became the nexus, the heart of the network, pulsing with energy as the wormholes sprang to life. One by one, the great civilizations of the galaxy were linked, the distances between them shrinking to nothing in the face of the artifact's might. But even as they marveled at their achievement, a sense of foreboding hung over the nexus. The convergence, ever watchful, had not been idle. They had seen the threat the network posed, the unraveling of their carefully laid plans. And so, with a fury born of desperation, they struck. A massive fleet, drawn from the darkest corners of the galaxy, descended upon the nexus, their weapons primed and ready. The convergence had played their hand, and now the fate of the galaxy would be decided in the fire and fury of battle. Louis stood on the command deck of the outpost, watching the approaching fleet with a mixture of fear and determination. Beside him, Dr. Voss gripped the artifact, her knuckles white with tension. They had come so far, sacrificed so much. The wormhole network was on the cusp of completion, the promise of a brighter future within their grasp. But now, with the convergence fleet bearing down upon them, that future hung in the balance. Louis turned to his companions, his eyes blazing with resolve. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "Everything we've fought for, everything we've believed in, it all comes down to this moment." He looked out at the fleet, the ships growing larger with each passing second. "We stand together, as one. We fight, not just for ourselves, but for every soul in the galaxy, for the chance to break the chains of the convergence, to forge a new path." Around him, the faces of his friends and allies were set with grim determination. Umbra, his hand resting on his weapon, gave a nod of agreement. Zephyr, eyes narrowed, cracked his knuckles in anticipation. Dr. Voss stepped forward, the artifact pulsing with energy in her hands. "We'll activate the network," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We'll show the Convergence the true power of unity, of cooperation, and we'll end their reign of shadows once and for all." Louis felt a surge of pride, of love for these beings who had become his family. They had each other, and they had the strength of their convictions. The Convergence may have had numbers and firepower, but they had something far more powerful. Hope, purpose, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and trust. As the first shots rang out, as the battle for the fate of the galaxy began in earnest, Louis knew that whatever happened, they would face it together. And in that moment, he believed, truly believed, that they would emerge victorious. The Nexus shuddered under a barrage of weapons fire as the Convergence fleet unleashed a relentless assault. Louis gritted his teeth, his hands flying over the control panels as he directed the outpost's defenses. Beside him, Dr. Voss worked frantically to bring the wormhole network online, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Prometheus status report," Louis barked, his voice straining over the din of battle. "Shields holding at 60%, the AI replied, its voice echoing through the command center. "Reinforcements from the Aurorans and Krovacs have arrived via wormhole and are engaging the enemy." On the view screen, a squadron of sleek Auroran fighters swooped past, their weapons cutting through the Convergence ships like a hot knife through butter. The hulking Krovacs battleships lumbered into position, their massive cannons belching forth streams of searing plasma. But for every enemy ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The Convergence had come prepared, their fleet vast and unyielding. "We need that network fully operational," Louis shouted, his fingers dancing across the controls as he targeted a cluster of enemy fighters. "How much longer?" "Almost there," Dr. Voss replied, her voice taut with tension. "Just a few more connections to establish." Suddenly an alarm blared through the command center. Prometheus's voice rang out, urgent and strained. "Alert. Unauthorized access detected in the artifact chamber. Convergence saboteur identified." Louis's heart seized in his chest. If the saboteur damaged the artifact, all their efforts would be for nothing. "Go," he said to Dr. Voss, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll handle things here." Dr. Voss nodded, her eyes locking with his for a brief moment, before she sprinted from the command center, a pulse rifle clutched in her hands. Louis turned back to the battle, his jaw clenched with determination. He had to buy her time, had to hold the line until the network was fully operational. He lost himself in the rhythm of combat, his mind and body working in perfect unison as he directed the Nexus's defenses. Prometheus fought alongside him, the AI's digital mind interfacing seamlessly with the outpost systems. But even with their combined efforts, the tide of battle began to turn against them. The Convergence pressed their advantage, their ships breaking through the Allied lines and closing in on the Nexus. Just as all seemed lost, Dr. Voss's voice crackled over the comm, breathless and strained. "Louis, the saboteur damaged the artifact. The network is destabilizing. I don't think I can fix it." Louis closed his eyes, a wave of despair washing over him. They had come so close, had sacrificed so much. He couldn't let it end like this. "There's one way," Dr. Voss said, her voice soft and heavy with emotion. "If I merge with the artifact, become one with the Nexus, I can stabilize the network. But—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. Louis knew what she was proposing, knew the price she would pay. "Elara," he said, his voice breaking, "I can't ask you to do this." "You're not asking," she replied, her voice filled with quiet determination. "I'm offering. This is my choice, Louis, my sacrifice." He bowed his head, tears stinging his eyes. He wanted to argue, to find another way. But deep down he knew she was right. This was the only path forward. "Do it," he said, his heart shattering with every word. "Save us all." In the artifact chamber, Dr. Voss stood before the pulsing relic, her hand outstretched. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. And then she stepped forward, her body dissolving into the artifact's swirling energy. In that moment, she became something more than human, more than mortal. She became the heart of the Nexus, the living embodiment of the wormhole network. With a surge of power, the network stabilized, the final connections snapping into place. Wormholes burst to life across the battlefield, disgorging thousands of allied ships from a dozen worlds. The Convergence fleet, suddenly outmatched and outflanked, crumbled under the onslaught. Their ships shattered and burned, their soldiers laying down their arms in surrender. In the command center, Louis watched as the last enemy vessel winked out on the view screen. Tears streamed down his face, his heart aching with a grief he had never known. But even in his sorrow, he felt a flicker of hope. Dr. Voss's sacrifice had not been in vain. The galaxy was free, the Convergence defeated. And though she was gone, she would live on in the heart of the Nexus, forever guiding and protecting the world she had helped to save. Louis rose to his feet, his shoulders heavy with the weight of what was to come. The war was over, but the work of rebuilding had only just begun, and he would be at the center of it all, the guardian of the Nexus and the keeper of Dr. Voss's legacy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. The alien races would look to him for guidance, for leadership in this new era of cooperation and discovery. He would not fail them. He would not fail her. With a heavy heart and an unbreakable resolve, Louis stepped forward into the future, ready to face whatever lay ahead. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.